For the airplane plummeting shot, I had to go through a lot of versions before I got to an animation that I was happy with. For references, I was using this shot from the movie Flight as they take a sudden drop into the ground. I also had a couple good references from people who just went out flying in their own airplanes with GoPros. There are two elements that I learned I needed in order to make this shot: the layout of the clouds and the movement of the camera plummeting. For the layout of the clouds, you need to be spatially aware of how you're oriented in the scene. To do this, you need to have a clear idea of where the horizon line is, so that when the camera drops, you can feel the full effect of the plummet. The second, more challenging part was animating the camera move. What made this sequence so hard originally to animate was that I couldn't nail the feel of a plane that just starts to fall. I wanted it to feel like you're right at the top of an amusement park ride.
Whoa!
At first I tried to just animate the camera doing this. I tried a couple different methods. The first obvious one was just to animate the camera, but that just didn't work. The second idea was to attach the camera to a 3D plane and animate the plane. If I can see the plane falling, maybe I can help to see the flaws in the animation more so than just a camera, and not too much. The next idea was to take the axis of where I'm rotating the camera and move it downwards. So that way I would just have to rotate. I wouldn't have to use the position tool as much. To do that, I liked the idea of making a second object that I could rotate. That way I would have 2 points of axis. One point where I have just the camera moving, and then another point down below. And that was more helpful, but it still just didn't look correct. But one interesting thing that I noticed, I actually found a tool where if you right click and you go to object properties and you click on the box motion path, you can see how your animation looks like in After Effects, which is pretty cool. So finally, I did come up with the solution. I was watching a tutorial here on how to do water simulations. They made a line and then they put a boat on the line that they created. And then the way that they attached the boat to the line was they did a thing called path constraint. And then what they did was, as the boat moves along the line, they added what's called bank, like when a boat turns, it banks. So this was basically what I needed. If you imagine a plane diving, it banks as it would fall down into the ground. So I made a line just like they had done, and then I added the curves to look like it was going in a nice downward motion. And then I attached the camera to the line and then added the bank effect. And then with all of these changes, I got a result that I was a whole lot happier with. Finally, I rendered it out, but each render was pulling at 9 hours a frame. I still had 10 more frames to go, which would add up to at least 90 more hours of render time. But I found a cheat. I took my test render, then put the last 10 test frames there instead, and just blurred it out so you couldn't see all the graininess. So that trick saved me about 90 hours of rendering. And then finally, just as the last 5% that I think helped to sell the idea was in After Effects, I added motion blur to it. And that would just sell the idea of perpetual sort of motion downwards. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm planning on making a whole lot more videos in the future. So if you enjoyed this, there is more to come.